The obsidian expanse of the trophy hall was silent, save for the faint, resonant hum of the starship's core. Here history was measured in bone. Skulls of creatures, long extinct fossils of species that had dared to challenge the cosmos, and gleaming with a wet, biomechanical luster, the elongated, eyeless craniums of the Kainsi, the xenomorphs. They were the centerpieces trophies of the hardest hunts. Upon his dais, the elder Kartai ran a scarred hand over the polished dome of a queen. His mandibles clicked softly, a sound of profound boredom. It was the galaxy's most dangerous secret the Yautja were weary. They had conquered every prey. The galaxy had grown stale, a hunting ground exhausted of true sport. The Kainsi were predictable, a ferocious but mindless tide. The Uman soldiers with their crude las guns were fragile, dying too easily. Honor had been won, status secured, but the thrill, the primal terror of being matched, that was fading. His council elites scarred, and Ancient stood motionless in the holographic glow of the navigation pit. They had hunted across nebulae and within the hearts of dying stars. They had faced armies, monsters, and gods. Now they waited. They craved a new gospel, a new prey worthy of their title. They craved a hunt that did not just promise victory, but threatened glorious, honorable extinction. Far across the segmentum obscurus, a festering green jewel spun in an unhallowed orbit. It had a name on imperial star charts, Catachan. To the few who had seen it and lived it was the death world. This was a misnomer. A death world implies a world that causes death. Catachan was death. It was not a planet with a jungle. It was a jungle that had consumed a planet. The air was not air. It was a humid, tactile blanket of conflicting pheromones, neurotoxic spores, and the constant, overwhelming stench of decay and fertilization. The ground was a treacherous, sucking morass, a thin layer of soil suspended over a planet-wide network of carnivorous root systems. Here the trees were the alpha predators. The murder tree did not wait for prey. It hunted at its barbed vines, lashing out with sentient speed sensors attuned to the carbon dioxide of a panicked breath. Its roots did not seek water. They sought blood, draining victims dry and leaving them hollowed husks. Even the flora that didn't move was lethal. The razor fern with monomolecular edges could flense a man to the bone if he brushed against it. The spica plant fired volleys of crystalline shards at any vibration. And then there was the fauna. The barking toad. A creature the size of a ration pack could lure prey with a perfect imitation of a human scream, only to detonate in a cloud of blinding, flesh-dissolving acid when approached. And above all, looming in the shadows, was the silhouette of the apex, the Catachan devil. Part scorpion, part serpent, all relentless hunger, a creature that even the planet itself seemed to fear. Catachan was a singular, unified entity. It was an ecosystem designed by a malevolent god with one purpose: to kill. And yet things lived here. Things that were impossibly human. They were not products of Imperial Guard training academies. They were not drilled in simulations. They were the product of natural selection at its most brutal. They were the Catachan jungle fighters. A patrol moved through the green hell, not as invaders, but as part of the hostile landscape. They were specters of muscle and scars, their skin stained with mud and chlorophyll. They wore no bulky flak armor. It was a death sentence, trapping heat and slowing movement by a fatal microsecond. They carried knives the size of short swords, the Catachan fang, and wore the pelts of creatures that had tried to kill them. Their leader, a man whose face was a roadmap of near-fatal encounters, raised a single gloved fist. The patrol froze. Not a sound, not a rustle. He tilted his head, listening past the cacophony of shrieks and insectile buzzing. He was listening for the silence, the specific, terrifying quiet that meant a macro-predator was close. 3 o'clock, a woman whispered, her voice like gravel. Spiker nest. The leader striker didn't even look. Cross. You see the shimmer. Sergeant Rippercross, a legend even among these superhuman survivors, merely grunted. He flowed forward, his massive frame seeming to dissolve into the foliage. He didn't avoid the traps of the jungle. He recognized them, navigated them, and if necessary, used them. He bypassed the trigger vines of the spiker nest, moving like a phantom. His fang flashed once. He returned to the patrol holding the severed primary root of the plant, dripping with neurotoxin. "It's moving," he said, which meant only one thing. "Right," Stryker nodded. "If it moves, kill it." The rest of the patrol finished the thought in their minds, the credo of their world. If it doesn't move, wait till it moves, then kill it. They were not just soldiers, they were survivors. They were the resident devils in a world of monsters. Back on the Yautja vessel, an alert chimed a sound unheard in decades. It was not a threat, but an anomaly. A junior pathfinder approached the navigation pit. "Elder, an automated signal. Ancient. Imperial origin designation. Adeptus Mechanicus Probe 7 Delta 4. The Elder's mandibles twitched in annoyance. "Human technology. Primitive. It has finished its decryption," the Pathfinder continued, hesitant. "It is the final transmission of a probe that went silent 100 of their solar cycles ago." "Data," the Elder grunted. On the main screen, the feed appeared. It was not a visual log. It was telemetry sensor readings and audio. The Yautja watched their impassive faces, betraying nothing. The log began. "Probe 7 Delta 4 descending. Atmosphere. Hostile. Extreme toxicity. 98.7%. Hull temperature rising. 55. 60. 70 degrees Celsius. Biological readings. Chaotic. Unprecedented." Then the audio kicked in. The sterile sound of the probe's landing struts settling. Then a sound. A low, wet tearing. "Hull integrity sensors active," the probe's monotone machine voice stated. "Pressure detected. Section 4. Vines. Analyzing. Composition unknown. Molecular. Acid." The sound of metal screaming. Not bending, screaming. Defense protocols engaged. The high-pitched whine of last turrets firing. The sound was muffled, as if firing into something thick and wet. Then the sound of the turrets crunching, followed by a hydraulic shriek. "Hull breach. Section 4. Section 5. Section 9. Multiple bioforms. Inside. The casing." The final data packet was a catastrophic sensory overload. The probe's internal temperature spiked to 400 degrees. Its sensors registered thousands of life forms. All hostile. All predators. The probe's machine voice wasn't monotone anymore. The sound of its systems being dissolved and consumed created a digitized, agonizing wail. "System. Failure. Biological. Consumption. Complete. Universe is hell. Log terminated." The screen went black. The trophy hall was silent. The elites stared. They had watched a fully armored, void-sealed Imperial probe, a machine of adamantium and steel, be eaten. Eaten by the plants. Kagatai the Elder slowly turned. He looked at the fragmented data, the name of the world flashing red Catachan. This was not a world of prey. This was a world of rivals, an entire planet that hunted. And according to the probe's last corrupted bioscans, human forms, thriving in the epicenter transmitted, "If it moves, kill it." The Elder walked to the navigation pit. He placed his hand on the holographic planet. His mandibles split wide, not in a roar, but in the Yautja equivalent of a slow, terrible smile. It was the sound of a god finding religion. This was not a hunt. This was a pilgrimage. This was the great hunt they had prayed for. This was an invitation. The fabric of space tore open in a silent, shimmering rupture. There was no thunder of re-entry, no fiery plume. A single Yautja vessel, a Vanguard-class scout ship, descended through Catachan's toxic upper atmosphere. Its mirrored hull bent the light around it, a phantom slipping through the suffocating green canopy. It settled in a small, swampy clearing, its landing struts sinking deep into the quagmire with a sickening thump. For a moment, the jungle was silent. The cacophony of shrieks and hisses paused as if the entire planet had inhaled. Then Catachan struck. From the murky water, thick, muscular vines erupted. They were not plants, they were constrictors. They slammed against the ship's hull, searching for purchase. The sound was not of leaves, but of muscle and sinew scraping against metal. More vines followed, lashing the ship, their acidic secretions steaming as they made contact. The vessel, a machine of war that had survived asteroid fields, was being actively assaulted by the local flora. A triangular hatch hissed open. The air that flooded the interior was a physical blow, a wave of heat, moisture, and 1,000 different kinds of rot. The vanguard emerged. He was Dacto, a seasoned hunter, his armor the color of cooling magma adorned with the teeth of beasts from a dozen worlds. He stood 2.5 meters tall, a monolith of muscle and technology. He activated his mask, the familiar hiss-click engaging his bio-helmet. His vision exploded. It was not a scan, it was a sensory assault. The mask's display, designed to isolate and track individual life forms, was a solid, blinding wall of white. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of overlapping, shifting thermal signals. The air, the ground, the trees, everything was alive and everything was hot. He was standing inside a living, breathing furnace filled with teeth. He quickly adjusted the sensitivity, filtering out the ambient life, forcing the display to show only signatures above a certain mass. The wall of white fractured, but only into 1,000 still terrifying sigils, all moving, all hunting. Dacto let out a low, guttural growl, a sound of profound appreciation. He stepped off the ramp, his foot sinking to the ankle in mud. The vines lashed at him. He didn't flinch. He unhooked his combi stick, not yet activating its plasma caster, and spun it, severing the nearest vines. They fell writhing like beheaded snakes, spraying corrosive ichor that sizzled on his armor. He took a single deep breath through his respirator, tasting the complex, lethal air. The hunt had begun. Dacto moved into the jungle, a ghost gliding through the undergrowth. He was the ultimate predator, invisible, silent. Yet here he felt loud. The ground betrayed him, every footstep a suck and pop in the mud. The leaves he brushed against seemed to react to his cloaking field shivering in its wake. He felt watched, not by a single entity, but by the entire collective forest. He was tracking a large signature, something moving with purpose. He found it in a clearing where the trees were strangely skeletal, stripped of all leaves. It was a Catachan devil. The creature was magnificent. It was a centipedean horror the size of an imperial chimera, its segmented body covered in thick, chitinous plates. A dozen scythe-like legs propelled it, and its massive tail, dripping with venom, arched over its back, ending in a stinger as long as a Yautja's arm. It was currently feeding its massive mandibles, crushing the armored shell of some other lesser monster. Dacto uncloaked, a challenge. The devil stopped feeding. It turned its cluster of simple black eyes, fixing on the alien intruder. It hissed a sound like a high-pressure steam valve rupturing. Dacto activated his wrist blades, the twin scythes extending with a lethal shing. He roared his challenge. The devil did not wait. It moved with a speed that defied its mass. It lunged not with its stinger, but with its entire body, aiming to crush him. Dacto dodged the ground, shaking as the beast impacted where he'd stood. He countered, leaping onto its back, driving his wrist blades deep into the gap between its armored plates. He expected a killing blow. Instead, the beast shrieked a sound of rage, not pain. The armor was thicker than he'd anticipated. The creature thrashed, rolling violently, trying to crush him against the trees. Dacto was thrown clear, landing hard. The devil's tail whipped down. He barely parried the blow with his combi stick, the force of the impact, sending shudders up his arm and knocking him to one knee. The venom sizzled on his weapon's shaft. This was not a simple beast. This was a warrior. Dacto changed tactics. He recloaked, evading the next furious lunge. He activated his plasma caster, the red triangle of the targeting laser, painting the creature's head. He fired. The blue bolt of energy struck the devil's face, exploding in a shower of gore and melted armor. The creature staggered, half its head vaporized, and it still came on. Blinded and dying, it charged in the direction of the last attack, mandibles snapping, stinger thrashing wildly. Dacto, filled with a brutal respect, uncloaked again. He met the dying charge head-on. He ducked under the wild stinger, rammed the base of his combi stick into the ground, and angled the plasma-charged spear upwards. The devil, in its blind momentum, impaled itself. It slid down the shaft, its own weight driving the spearhead up through its body until it stopped twitching mere inches from Dacto's mask. Dacto stood panting, covered in the creature's steaming acidic blood. He looked down. The tail strike had cracked 2 of his armor plates. The acid blood was already eating at the alloy. He was damaged. On his first encounter, he deactivated his mask and took a full, unfiltered breath of the Catachan air. It burned his lungs, but it was the scent of glory. He looked at the colossal dead predator. This, his mandibles clicked, is a good start. Forward outpost. Kilo Zeta was less of a fortress and more of a scar. It had been carved out of the jungle with flamers and chainsaws, and the jungle was constantly, relentlessly trying to reclaim it. The perimeter was a mixture of rusting promethium barrels, sharpened pylon stakes, and automated sentry guns that clicked and whirred forever, hunting for movement. The walls were living barricades of razor fern cultivated and pointed outward. The air smelled of ozone sweat and the ever-present damp rot. They called it Last Hope, a joke so bitter it had long since lost any meaning. Inside the command bunker, a prefabricated container slowly being crushed by a banyan tree's roots. Colonel Arvin Stryker stared at a flickering tactical display. The map was 90% red zone, which meant unsurvivable. The 10% green zone was merely lethal. Stryker was a man carved from granite, his face a web of old scars and new worries. He hadn't slept in 3 days, but on Catachan that was normal. He sipped a black, tar-like substance that passed for coffee and rubbed the bridge of his nose. The air shimmered, and a man-shaped hole in the world stepped through the bunker's open doorway. Sergeant Ripper Cross didn't use doors like a normal person. He simply appeared. He was a mountain of scarred muscle, his bicep thicker than Stryker's thigh. He wore a simple singlet green fatigues, and carried his fang knife, a weapon that had tasted more Xeno's blood than most regiments' entire armories. He placed a wet, leathery leaf on Stryker's desk. "Morning, Colonel. Perimeter's active. Brain leaf sprouting near the south gate again. Had to clear 'em," acknowledged Sergeant Stryker said, not looking up from the map. "We're burning that quadrant this afternoon. Anything else?" Cross's eyes, chips of obsidian, settled on the tactical display. "Patrol Gamma. They're late." Stryker nodded, his face grim. 6 hours late. No Vox contact since Aero 400. Last grid marked them near the Devil's Spine ridge. Cross grunted. "Spine's bad this season. Spiker migration, or the ground's gone soft again." He tapped a section of the map. "This whole area is a sinkhole waiting to happen. Probably swallowed 'em whole. Or the spikers got 'em. Or a devil. Or the brainers." He shrugged, a gesture that conveyed the endless, mundane list of ways to die on this planet. This was not a crisis. This was Tuesday. It was Lieutenant Hask's team, Stryker said quietly. A flicker of something regret, perhaps, crossed his face. His first command. "Then he's had a short command, sir." Cross's voice was flat, not cruel, but factual. "We tag 'em lost, or we send a recovery team." Stryker sighed, the sound of a man perpetually weighing one acceptable loss against another. "A recovery team just means more lost men. We can't spare the manpower, not with the main ammo convoy due tomorrow. The jungle's taken them. Mark Patrol Gamma as standard attrition." "Standard attrition," Cross repeated. It was the Catachan phrase for eaten by the planet. It was the cost of breathing. Stryker finally looked up, his eyes meeting the sergeant's. "Just another day in paradise, Ripper." Cross's lips pulled back in something that might have been a smile, but looked more like a snarl. "Just another day, Colonel." He picked up the leathery leaf. "I'll go teach the rookies how to not get eaten by this." He turned and dissolved back into the green hell, leaving Stryker alone with the flickering map. the ghosts of Patrol Gamma already fading from the screen. This was their life. A constant grinding war, not against an enemy, but against an environment. They were holding a line against a foe that could not be beaten, only survived. And they had no idea that the rules of their survival were about to be rewritten by something that had just fallen from the sky. Dacto moved through the upper canopy, a place the Yautja called the Otractor, or the Ghost Road. It was a highway of massive interlocking branches high above the jungle floor, a realm where the planet's lesser predators dared not tread. From here he was a god looking down. He had left the devil's carcass for the planet to reclaim. His scanners were now attuned, filtering out the macrofauna, searching for the anomaly, the Ooman. He found them. 3 of them. They were moving in a tight triangular formation through a ravine choked with luminous fungi. His mask zoomed in, his brow ridges furrowed. These were not the soft, corpse-starch-fed soldiers he had collected from other war zones. They were different. His thermal vision was almost useless. The men were caked in thick, dark mud, a primitive but astonishingly effective counter to his heat-based tracking. Their body heat was a dull, blurred smudge, blending almost perfectly with the sweltering ambient temperature of the jungle. But his bioscanner could not be fooled. He saw their hearts beating in steady, controlled rhythms. He watched them move. They did not walk through the jungle. They flowed with it. They avoided trigger vines they couldn't possibly have seen. They tested the ground before committing their full weight. They communicated entirely with silent hand gestures, their eyes constantly scanning not just the ground, but the canopy. His canopy. Dacto watched fascinated as the leader, designated Hask by the faint Vox signature he carried, paused. The man knelt, plucking a leaf. He sniffed it, then gestured to his 2 squad mates. They immediately fanned out their weapons' crude las guns, pointing towards an unseen threat. They were setting an ambush. The Yautja, the galaxy's perfect ambush predator, was watching a lesser species set a perfect ambush of their own. He marveled at their instincts. They were using the jungle as a weapon just as he did. They were not prey. They were hunters. A primal surge of professional respect, cold and sharp, filled Dacto's chest. This was the challenge he had craved. It was time to test the quality of these new trophies. He dropped from the trees, a 500-pound warrior landing on the mossy ground without a single sound. He was invisible, his cloaking field bending the humid light around him. He moved behind the rear guard, a heavy-set man with a flamer. Dacto was close enough to smell the promethium fuel. The soldier froze. He didn't turn. He didn't shout. His head tilted a subtle animalistic motion. He had sensed him. Not with sight, not with sound. He had sensed the displacement of air, the subtle emptiness where the jungle's noise should have been. Impressive. Dacto did not wait for the man to turn. He uncloaked, wanting them to see. The air tore open, revealing the armored giant. The soldier's eyes widened. He opened his mouth to scream. The Yautja's wrist blades extended with a shing and swept up. The man's head was severed. He slumped, his flamer thudding onto the soft earth. "Contact the second soldier," the Vox operator screamed. He spun, raising his lasgun. Dacto's plasma caster mounted on his shoulder tracked the target. The red triangle settled on the man's chest. A hiss womb. The bolt of blue energy struck the soldier, vaporizing his torso in an explosive cloud of steam and gore. The Voxcaster shrieked with static and died. 2 kills, 3 seconds. This left only the leader, Hask. A young man barely out of adolescence, his rank markings fresh. He was the rookie Lieutenant Stryker had mourned. He stood paralyzed, his 2 veterans, his mentors, dead at his feet. He looked at the mangled bodies, then at the impossible shimmering giant standing before him. Dacto watched, waiting for the inevitable. The Ooman would run. He would beg. Or he would freeze. This was the part of the hunt that always disappointed. Hask did none of those things. The terror in his eyes did not fade, but it was overwhelmed by something else. A pure, undiluted, suicidal rage. A rage born of a life fighting a planet that wanted him dead. This thing was just one more monster. "Catachan," he roared. He dropped his useless laser gun, yanked the massive fang knife from its sheath, and charged. Yautja was, for the first time in centuries, genuinely surprised. The small, soft-skinned prey was attacking him. He raised his armored forearm to swat the human aside. Hask's fangs scraped against the Yautja's gauntlet with a shriek of metal. The human was fast, his swings wild but powerful. He ducked under Yautja's return slash and lunged, driving his blade with all his weight, not at the armor, but at the hip. It was the exact spot where the Catachan devil's acid had eaten at the armor seal. The crude, sharpened steel blade bit deep, Yautja roared, a high shriek-like sound of pure shock and pain. He looked down. His own fluorescent green blood was welling from the wound, sizzling on the hot armor. He had been wounded. Wounded. His rage was volcanic. He backhanded Hask, a casual, contemptuous blow. The Catachan soldier flew 10 feet his body, slamming into a banyan tree with a sound of breaking bones. He collapsed to the ground, his chest crushed. Yautja stalked over to the fallen human. He stood over him, his leg bleeding freely. The rookie Hask looked up, his lungs filling with blood. He spat a crimson wad at the Yautja's feet and tried feebly to raise his knife one last time. Yautja stared at him. This was a warrior. He had faced a god and he had drawn its blood. Yautja did not use his caster. He did not mock. He granted the soldier an honorable death. The wrist blades descended clean and fast. Yautja stood in the sudden echoing silence. He touched his wound, feeling the sting. He had come to hunt. He had not expected the prey to hunt back. He let out a low, clicking chuckle. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. He had found his paradise. Cross moved with a predator's certainty. He was following the faint, lingering scent of ozone from Hask's last fire, a scent that shouldn't have been there. The jungle recycled its dead quickly. 6 hours was long enough for a body to be reduced to bone paste and slurry. He expected to find a sinkhole, or the massive steaming remains of a spiker nest feeding. He did not expect to find this. He signaled his team to halt. The air in the ravine was still, too still. The luminous fungi cast a sickly, pale blue light. Sarge whispered one of his men, "Breaker." "What is it?" Cross didn't answer. He looked up. Breaker followed his gaze. "Oh, Emperor's throne." They were hanging. All 3 members of Patrol Gamma. They were suspended by their ankles from the thick aerial roots of a murder tree, which strangely was not trying to consume them. But that wasn't the worst part. It wasn't the horror of the barking toad or the violence of a devil. This was cold. They were skinned, flensed of their flesh with an almost surgical precision. Their bodies hung like crimson anatomical charts in the alien blue light. Their equipment was gone. Their weapons were gone. Only the meat remained dripping slowly onto the fungal floor. This was not the work of a beast. A beast was sloppy. A beast fed. This was the work of something else. Something that collected. Don't look up." Cross growled, his voice a low rumble. He scanned the canopy, his fang knife in one hand, his customized shotgun in the other. The trees were empty. But they felt wrong. Secure the perimeter. Vox the colonel. Tell him we found Gamma, and tell him to come here. Now. The ravine was thick with armed Catachans when Stryker arrived. They stood back-to-back, weapons aimed at the shadows, flinching at every insectile click. The sheer wrongness of the scene had rattled them more than any mauling. Stryker knelt by the one body they had cut down, Hask. Medscan, Stryker ordered. A medic ran a scanner over the corpse. "Sir, the cuts, they're cauterized, sliced and sealed at the same time. Whatever blade did this, it was hot. Hotter than a plasma torch, but clean. No tearing. Like a molecule-thin scalpel." Stryker looked at Cross. "No animal does this. No beast in this hellhole bothers with artistry." He stood up, wiping his gloves. This was an execution. A trophy. Worse, Colonel Cross said. He was circling the clearing, his eyes on the ground, the trees, the air. "Look, what am I looking at, Sergeant?" "Nothing." Cross pointed to the mud around the hanging bodies. "Our tracks, yours, mine, the team's. But nothing else. Whatever did this, whatever hung 3 full-grown men 20 meters in the air, it left no tracks, no broken branches, no boot prints. It just was." Stryker's blood ran cold. On Catachan, everything left a sign. A creature that could move unseen and untracked, strong enough to hoist 3 soldiers, smart enough to use surgical tools. This was a new category of threat. Cross continued his sweep, his eyes scanning the moss on a tree trunk where Hask's body had been found. Something was glinting. It was not the blue fungus. It was something dark, metallic, and sharp. He carefully extracted it from the bark. It was a shard of metal, 3-pronged, impossibly balanced. It was still warm to the touch. He held it up. Sir Cross said, his voice dangerously low. "It left this." Stryker took the object. It was light, made of an unknown alloy, and its edges were so sharp they seemed to vibrate. It was part of a weapon, a throwing weapon. He recognized it from Hask's body. This shard had broken off when the lieutenant made his final defiant charge. He closed his fist around the shard, its edges cutting into his glove. "Ripper, they came here to send a message." "What message, Colonel?" "That this is their hunting ground now." Stryker's face hardened, settling into the granite mask of a commander. The fear was gone, replaced by the familiar cold rage of the Catachan. "They think we're prey. They think they can just add us to the planet's butcher's bill." He turned to his Vox operator. "Patch me to all commands, all outposts." He waited for the click of the open channel. "This is Stryker. We have a new threat. Priority 1. It is not native. It is intelligent, equipped, and it is hostile. Effective immediately, all standard attrition protocols are suspended. All losses are now considered enemy action. Double all patrols. I want trip flares and proximity mines on every meter of every perimeter. I want heavy flamers on full autonomy." He paused, looking at the alien shard in his hand. "We are being hunted. It is time to hunt it back." Stryker out. In the silence of the ravine, Cross sheathed his fang. "It's fast, sir, and it's invisible." "It bleeds," Stryker said. He looked closely at the shard. On its razor edge, mixed with Hask's blood, was a single tiny drop of fluorescent green fluid. Before he died, the rookie, he wounded it. Cross looked at the single impossible drop of bright green blood. A slow, terrible smile spread across his face. "Good," Cross said. "If it bleeds, we can kill it." Far above in the canopy, Yautja watched them. He was cloaked, clutching the seeping wound in his side. He watched them analyze the scene. He watched them find the shuriken fragment he had lost. He watched their anger, their lack of fear, their resolve. He activated his transmitter, sending a single coded burst to the Vanguard ship, which relayed it into the deep void. The message was simple. Paradise found. The prey is worthy. Send the honor guard. High in the toxic green-brown orbit of Catachan, the void ripped open. This was not the subtle tear of a scout ship. This was a brutal, jagged wound in reality. A Yautja Hatakcha vessel, a great hunt ship, shoved its way into real space. It was a massive, brutalist design of dark alloy, pockmarked and scarred from 1,000 campaigns. It bristled with weapons, but its most terrifying feature was the row of cavernous launch bays lining its belly. Inside, the atmosphere was thick, hot, and humid, mimicking the Yautja homeworld. Dozens of elites, the honored, stood ready. Their armor was heavier than Darkto's, adorned with the skulls of Kainsi xenomorphs, the bones of crate dragons, and the pelts of creatures that had no name in the Imperial lexicon. They were the best, the most ruthless, and they were here in force. On the command dais stood the Hunt Leader. He was a giant even among his kind, his skin a mottled ancient gray. One of his mandibles had been snapped and replaced with a gleaming serrated alloy substitute. His armor was Baroque, etched with millennia of kill tallies, and his right gauntlet was a unique heavy-duty variant designed for crushing, not just cutting. He listened to Dakto's final garbled transmission, the sound of the rookie Uman's defiance. A low, appreciative click rumbled in his chest. He slammed his fist onto the activation rune. The hunt was sanctioned. The launch bays opened and dozens of heavily armored drop pods screamed down into the atmosphere, fiery tears in the green sky, scattering across the continent. The hunt leader took his own pod, aimed precisely at the beacon of the fallen vanguard. The hunt leader's pod smashed into the clearing, crushing the skeletal remains of the Catachan devil Dakto had slain. The jungle had already reclaimed the kill, the bones picked clean and covered in a carpet of rust-colored moss. He emerged into the oppressive humidity, his cloak field shimmering. He followed the faint trail of green Yautja blood. He found Dakto. Dakto was not where he had fallen in battle. He had been crawling, dragging himself back toward his ship. He was slumped against the hull, his medkit open, just beyond his lifeless grasp. The wound Hask had given him, the crude steel gash in his hip, was black and swollen. But it was not what had killed him. From that wound, a vibrant, terrifying purple fungus had erupted. It had grown with supernatural speed, its tendrils forcing their way through the seals of his armor, enveloping his entire lower torso. It had fed on him, dissolved him, and anchored him to the ship. The planet itself had delivered the killing blow, finding the single point of weakness the Uman had provided. The other elites began to arrive, emerging from the jungle, their cloaks deactivating. They formed a silent, respectful circle around the fungal, consumed body of their brother. The hunt leader knelt. He saw the wound. He saw the primitive, non-energy nature of the cut. A knife. He plugged a data link into Dakto's helmet, downloading the combat log. On his gauntlet's holographic display, the elites watched Dakto's final moments. They saw the two soldiers die easily. And then they saw the third, the small, soft-skinned Uman Hask. They watched him charge. They watched him dodge a blow that should have killed him. They watched him drive his crude blade into the vulnerable joint. They watched him draw blood. The hunt leader deactivated the log. The jungle was silent, save for the hum of Yautja technology. He rose to his full, towering height. He did not roar in anger. He did not grieve. He raised his head and let out a long, earth-shaking roar of pure, primal joy. The other elites answered a deafening chorus that sent the planet's fauna scattering. Dakto had not died in failure. He had died discovering their purpose. He had found a prey that did not run, a prey that fought, a prey that could wound and honored, a prey that lived in a hell that could kill and honored. The hunt leader unsheathed his own massive wrist blades. The twin scythes etched and ancient gleamed in the dim light. He turned to his warriors. His message was simple, conveyed in a series of sharp, guttural commands. This was not a hunt. This was a culling. This was a test of worth. The Uman of this world were a new, glorious strain. Their skulls would be the centerpieces of their trophy halls. He pointed to the jungle, his mandibles spread wide in a terrifying grin. "Go," his voice modulator growled. "Bring me everything." In an instant, the clearing was empty. A dozen invisible apex predators melted into the green hell, the great hunt beginning in earnest. The command bunker at Last Hope was a hive of controlled panic. Strikers' new orders were being relayed, perimeters were being reinforced, and every long-range scanner was pegged at maximum. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and fear. Cross stood near the tactical map, his arms crossed, listening. He was listening to the jungle. And the jungle was too quiet, so the Vox operator, a young trooper named Varus, said, his voice tight. Listening post Delta, their heart rate monitors, they just flatlined. "All 6, simultaneously. Get them on," the Vox striker commanded. "LP Delta, this is Last Hope, do you copy over?" Only static answered. A high-pitched tearing sound, as if the Vox unit itself was being ripped apart. Then through the white noise came a sound. It was not a Catachan sound. It was not the shriek of a devil or the chitter of a spiker. It was a heavy, wet, click-gurgle roar, a sound that vibrated with malevolent intelligence. It was followed by a single blood-choked human scream cut short. Before Stryker could even process the loss, Another light on the tactical map flashed crimson, so Watchtower Gamma Varus shouted, his professionalism cracking. "They're under attack, heavy weapons fire." Stryker slammed the channel open. "Gamma report. What's your status?" The sound that came back was chaos. The deep whoosh of Gamma's heavy flamer firing, followed by the alien hiss-voom of plasma bolts. "They're inside the tower. They're invisible. I can't... Ugh!" The transmission ended in a wet, final gurgle. The flamer cut out. Then silence. Patrol 9 Cross said, his voice a low growl. He was pointing at the map. They were checking the ammo convoy route. "They're gone too." Varus frantically worked his console. "No signal, sir? No life signs? It's like they were never there." Stryker stared at the map. Delta. Gamma. 9. 3 separate units kilometers apart, all neutralized in less than 5 minutes. This wasn't a lone predator. This wasn't even a pack. He traced the line between the 3 lost units. It was a triangle, a tactical perimeter. They weren't being hunted, they were being dismantled. Their smart cross said, confirming Stryker's fear. "They took our eyes. Gamma and Delta had the deep woods scanners. They're blinding us, isolating us. It's an invasion." Stryker said, his voice flat and cold. The blood drained from Varus's face. "This is a coordinated, intelligent assault." He took a deep breath, the decision hardening his features into a mask of grim resolve. He slammed his hand on the Mastervox panel, activating the Priority 1 broadcast. "This is Colonel Stryker. All commands, all call signs. I am declaring code Ironwomb. I repeat, code Ironwomb. All standing orders are void. All patrols, all forward units, all outposts disengage. Disengage now. This is not a drill. We are under full-scale coordinated Xenos attack. Pull back to the last hope hard point. Any unit that does not confirm receipt will be declared lost. Acknowledge." The radio exploded with terrified, confused acknowledgements. Sir Varus stammered, We don't retreat." "We do today," Trooper Stryker snapped, not looking at him. His eyes were locked with crosses. "We've been fighting a planet. We know how to do that. This is something new. We can't fight them out there. Not in their element. Not when they can be anywhere, and we can be nowhere." Cross slowly unsheathed his fang, the polished steel glinting in the bunker's low light. He didn't protest the order. He understood it. They had lost the initiative. The jungle was no longer their sanctuary. The Jungle Striker said, his voice barely a whisper as he watched the red lights on his map multiply, "is not ours anymore." Cross nodded a single sharp motion. "Then we'll make them come to us. And we'll make this ground so toxic they'll wish they'd stayed in the trees." A Yautja elite known as Pajau. The ghost moved through the deep liana jungle. He was a master of the cloak, a stalker who had claimed the heads of a dozen species' best scouts. He was tracking a retreating squad of Catachans, toying with them. He watched them through his biohelmet, their panicked, heat-blurred forms scrambling through the mud. He saw their fear. It was delicious. He activated his plasma caster. The 3-dot laser settled on the back of the rearmost soldier. He was about to fire to collect another easy trophy when his mask screamed a warning. A proximity alert. From below, he looked down. His cloak bending the light revealed the ground beneath him. He was standing on a patch of leaves. No, he was standing on a covering of leaves. Underneath, almost invisible to his thermal scan, was a grid of sharpened, fire-hardened wooden stakes angled upwards. A punji trap. Crude, primitive, and utterly lethal. He leaped back a microsecond before his weight would have collapsed the trap. He landed snarling. They knew. They knew he was here, and they had baited him. The retreating squad wasn't retreating. They were luring him into a kill zone. The squad spun. They didn't fire wildly. They fired in a controlled, converging volley not at him, but at the trap he had just sprung. Flamer burn it. A torrent of promethium erupted, engulfing the area. Pajau was forced to jump into the canopy to avoid the inferno. The heat was immense. It washed over his cloak, causing the system to flicker and overload. For a split second, his form shimmered a distorted, man-shaped hole in the air. There one of the Catachans roared, firing a lasbolt at the shimmer. The bolt was wild, but it didn't matter. Pajau was exposed. He recloaked, but the tactical advantage was lost. He hissed in fury. These were not prey, they were trappers. Across the sector, another elite, Tikek. The blade was having his own problems. He had cornered a lone Catachan, a sniper, in a rocky outcropping. He was enjoying the game. He moved silently, savoring the moment before the kill. He was invisible, unstoppable. Then his vision whitened. A blinding total overload. His mask auto-compensated, but the world was gone, replaced by a searing uniform heat. He tore his mask off his mandibles, clicking in agony and confusion. The Catachan sniper wasn't in the rocks. He was in a mud hole covered from head to toe in thick, black, cold sludge. He had become a thermal void. But that wasn't what had blinded the Yautja. The sniper had thrown a specialized grenade. Not a frag. A thermal flare. It had detonated, bathing the entire area in a massive, sustained bloom of magnesium-white heat, turning the jungle into a miniature sun. Tikek's primary sense organ neutralized, roared in blind fury. He drew his wrist blades, ready to charge. The Catachan sniper didn't run. He calmly raised his long laser weapon that didn't rely on heat, and put a single high-velocity round straight through the Yautja's unmasked, unprotected throat. Tikek dropped, gurgling his shock, clutching the smoking hole in his neck. He dyed his cloak, flickering out, revealing his massive, armored form to the mud-caked soldier. The Catachan wraith spat into the mud. If it's hot, it's here. If it's too hot, it's a trap. Simple. The Yautja hunt leader watched this exchange via Tikek's helmet feed before it cut to static. He stood over the smoking corpse of Pajau, who had been brought down by a second squad after the flamer trap had exposed him. He was furious, not at the Umans, he was furious at his hunters. They were dying. They were dying to mud and wood. They were relying on their technology, their cloaks, their plasma. And it was failing. His mask's display was a nightmare. The Catachan jungle wasn't a normal environment. The heat was not uniform. It was a chaotic, swirling mess. Geothermal vents created false heat signatures. The massive biothermic reactions of the giant flora created thermal walls that blocked his vision. The air was so full of metallic particles and thick spores that his cloaking field was constantly generating static, leaving a faint ozone scent that the Catachans, with their animalistic senses, could smell. His hunters were invisible to the eye, but to the Catachans they were loud. They smelled of ozone. They made the air shimmer. They were a void where the jungle's ambient heat should be. "They're not seeing us," Cross explained over the Vox, his voice a calm center in the storm of retreat. He was crouched over a patch of ground, pointing to a single, perfect, unmuddied footprint in the shape of a Yautja's foot. "They're seeing where we aren't. Don't look for the monster. Look for the hole in the jungle that the monster leaves behind. Look for the silence. Look for the clean spots." Stryker, safe in the bunker, watched the tactical map. His retreating forces were no longer just retreating. They were bleeding the enemy. They were trading space for blood, luring the Yautja into 1,000 pre-prepared ambushes. The Catachans, born in an environment designed to kill, were treating the galaxy's most advanced hunters as just another, slightly more clever native predator. The hunt leader looked at the body of his fallen brother Pajau. The Umans had learned. They were adapting. He let out a low growl. This was magnificent. He would have to adapt as well. No more games, no more stalking. It was time for slaughter. The Last Hope bunker was a torrent of organized chaos. Wounded men were being dragged in. Ammunition was being stacked against the blast doors. The retreating squads were filtering in their faces, grim, having paid a heavy price for every meter of jungle they had surrendered. Stryker stood over the tactical map, a king on a rapidly shrinking island drawing new lines of defense. "Cross, your squads pulling back from the east gate. I need you to coordinate the heavy flamer emplacements in." Stryker stopped. Cross wasn't listening. He was checking the action on his shotgun. He was refilling his pouches not with ammo, but with small, dark, resinous-looking packages. Sergeant Stryker said, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "Your men are waiting." "They're good men, sir," Cross said, not looking up. "They'll hold the line, and you'll be with them. That is an order." Cross finally looked up, his eyes flat and lifeless as a devil's met the colonel's. "No, sir." The bunker went silent. The Vox operators froze. Varys looked like he was about to be sick. Insubordination on Catachan was a death sentence. "You're relieving yourself of command," Sergeant Stryker asked, his hand dropping to his sidearm. "You're a good commander, Colonel. You think like a soldier, you consolidate, you defend, you think about acceptable losses." Cross slung his shotgun over his shoulder and picked up his fang, wiping it on his fatigues. "But you're not fighting soldiers, you're fighting hunters, and I'm not a soldier, I'm just another one of this jungle's monsters." He began walking not toward the blast door, but toward a shadowed maintenance grill in the back of the bunker. "You run from them, they'll just pen you in and slaughter you." Cross's voice rumbled. "You don't run from a hunter. You don't defend against a hunter. You make them the prey. This is my home, and I'm going to take it back. I'm going to clean the house. Ripper, you go out that grill, you are on your own. You'll be declared lost." Stryker yelled. Cross paused, one hand on the grill. He looked back, a humorless, terrifying grin splitting his scarred face. "I've been lost since the day I was born, Colonel, but I'm the one they'll never find." He slipped into the darkness and was gone. Not a sound. He had left the fortress and returned to the true safety, the jungle. For 2 days, Cross was a ghost. He moved through the jungle like water caked in cooling mud and pheromonal moss that made him smell like a native herbivore. He was hunting a hunter. He found the signs: a flicker of ozone, a patch of leaves too still, the faint, high-frequency hum of Yautja technology. He found one. It was an elite Karthek. The patient, a master of traps. Karthek had established a perfect kill zone on a narrow game trail, a choke point. He had buried a Yautja net trap powered by a small energy cell and triggered by a sophisticated mass-sensitive plate. He was cloaked in a tree 50 meters away, his plasma caster aimed, waiting for a retreating Catachan squad. Cross watched unseen for an hour. He saw the whole setup. He saw the hunter. A wave of professional contempt washed over him. This alien was lazy. He was relying on his technology. He was waiting for the prey to come to him. Cross did not circle. He did not retreat. He slithered. On his belly. For 3 hours he moved at the pace of a dying slug, pushing himself through the mud and roots, never once making a sound that rose above the ambient noise of the jungle. He got under the trap, burrowing like a native grave worm. He found the buried power cell. He found the firing mechanism. His massive, scarred hands, which could crush a man's skull, moved with the delicacy of a surgeon. He didn't disarm the trap. He didn't bypass it. He rewired it. He reversed the trigger contacts and carefully, painstakingly rerouted the firing arc. He aimed the net launcher not at the trail, but at the tree where the Yautja was hiding. Then he slithered back out a 100-meter crawl. He found a rock. He took a deep breath. And he threw it a perfect arc onto the pressure plate. Thwack! Hiss! Whoom! Karthek in the tree heard the trigger. He leaned forward, activating his mask's recorder, ready to savor the catch. He was rewarded by the sound of the net launcher firing at him. He had no time to react. The high-velocity net slammed into him, pinning him against the banyan tree. The monomolecular wires constricted, shearing through his armor seals and biting deep into his flesh. He roared a sound of agony and disbelief, firing his caster wildly into the sky. Cross stepped out of the foliage covered in mud, his shotgun held loosely. He was perfectly visible. The Yautja froze, his one free hand trying to tear the net off his mask, registering the approaching Ooman. Cross didn't use his shotgun. He walked calmly up to the trapped, bleeding alien god. He unsheathed his fang. The Yautja hissed a sound of defiance. "Get off my planet!" Cross growled. He plunged the fang into the Yautja's throat, twisting it, silencing the alien forever. The hunt leader found what was left of Karthek 2 hours later. His locator beacon had gone dead, But the signal from his auto-recorder had transmitted one final corrupted image, the mud-caked Uman Cross stepping out of the jungle, his eyes cold and victorious. But the image was not what made the hunt leader stop. It was the body. Cross had not skinned it. He had not taken a trophy. He had left a message. He had dragged the massive Yautja's body to the center of the game trail. Using his immense strength, he had impaled it. A single massive, fire-hardened tree trunk, a stake the size of a small cannon, had been driven up through the creature's torso, pinning it upright, like an icon in a twisted church. And then he had decorated it. Dozens of sharpened spiker thorns were driven through the alien's limbs. The Yautja's high-tech mask was smashed, and its broken shards had been shoved into the creature's own gaping, mandibled mouth. The advanced plasma caster was broken in two, its components scattered. This was not a kill. This was desecration. It was a primitive, brutal, and deeply personal insult. The Yautja honored their prey. This Uman had mocked the kill. He had mocked the hunter. The hunt leader stood before the grotesque totem. His mandibles quivered, not with fear, but with a cold, absolute volcanic rage. He had come here for sport. He had found a worthy challenge. Now it was different. This Uman, this ghost, had made it personal. The code of honor, the rules of the hunt, they were secondary. This was no longer a test. It was an extermination. He owed this one Uman a death of unimaginable pain. Cross was running. For the first time since this began, he was truly, desperately running. He was being hunted by the hunt leader's Catachan, his personal wolf pack of 3 elites. They were masters of pursuit, relentless and fast. They weren't trying to kill him. Not yet. They were herding him using subtle plasma bursts to steer him, cutting off his escape routes, driving him out of the dense jungle he knew and into the one place he couldn't hide, a wide, sulfuric swamp basin. Cross burst through a curtain of hanging moss, the ground turning to sucking mud beneath his boots. He skidded to a halt at the edge of the open basin. It was a kill zone. No cover. He spun his shotgun, raised his chest, heaving. He was trapped. A shimmering distortion landed to his left, another to his right. The third, the pack leader, landed directly in front of him. They uncloaked simultaneously. They were giants, their armor a dark, burnished bronze, adorned with the elongated skulls of Kainsi. The 3 red dots of their plasma casters settled on his chest, a perfect, inescapable triangle of death. Cross spat a wad of bloody saliva into the mud. He gripped his fang. If he was going to die, he would die on his feet charging. He tensed. The Yautja tensed, savoring the final moment. And the world ended. It was not a sound. It was a feeling. A low-frequency vibration that Cross felt in his teeth, in his bones. The stagnant water of the basin began to ripple, not from wind, but from a deep, percussive thud. 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 The Yautja pack leader tilted his head, his mandibles clicking in confusion. His mask's seismic sensors were screaming, flashing alerts of a massive, high-velocity ground convergence. Cross's eyes widened. His survival instincts, honed by a lifetime of hell, screamed one word. He didn't need scanners. He knew that rhythm. It was the sound of the planet's own heartbeat, and it was a heart attack. Stampede, he whispered a prayer of pure terror. The wall of jungle to their right didn't bend. It disintegrated. A Catachan devil, a monster of black chitin and blind rage, the size of a battle tank, burst into the clearing. It wasn't hunting. It was fleeing. Its massive legs churned the mud into a spray, and right behind it, another, and another, and a dozen more. It was a full-scale migration, a herd of apex predators driven by some seasonal madness or a volcanic eruption kilometers away was plowing a new destructive path through the jungle. And Cross and the Yautja were standing directly in their way. The truce was unspoken and immediate. The Yautja pack leader roared a sound of fury at the interruption, and his plasma caster swiveled. He fired not at Cross, but at the face of the nearest charging devil. The blue energy bolt exploded, vaporizing the creature's head, but its massive dying body, driven by pure momentum, smashed into the second Yautja elite. The hunter was thrown like a rag doll, his armor screaming as it was crushed against a petrified tree. The rules of the hunt were gone. This was now survival. Dayu Filth Cross roared his terror, replaced by battle fury. He didn't run. He emptied his shotgun into the underbelly of a different devil that was bearing down on him, the explosive slugs staggering the beast just long enough for it to swerve. The Yautja pack leader and his remaining warrior were now back-to-back, a spinning cyclone of wrist blades and combi sticks fighting for their lives. They were magnificent aliens, gods of war, carving deep wounds into the charging monsters. But they were outnumbered by tons of armored, mindless fury. The Yautja who had been hit, his leg broken, his armor breached, dragged himself to one knee. He saw Cross, his true prey, distracted by the chaos. He raised his caster for the killing shot. He never fired. The devil he had been fighting, the one whose head had been half vaporized, whipped its massive barbed tail in a final agonizing death spasm. The stinger, as long as a man, impaled the Yautja from behind, punching straight through his backplate and out his chest. The alien warrior looked down, his mandibles clicking in what might have been surprise. He slumped dead. Cross saw his chance. He didn't gloat. He didn't fire. He fled. He dove into the churning, muddy water, using the bodies of the giant devils as moving cover. He swam low and deep, breathing through the muck, letting the current of the stampede pull him away. The two surviving Yautja saw him go. The pack leader roared a sound of pure, unadulterated frustration. He wanted to pursue, to finish the Ooman, but he couldn't. He and his last warrior were still fighting for their lives against 3 more of the rampaging behemoths. Cross emerged from the swamp a kilometer downstream, covered in mud blood and monster ichor. He was alive. He was free. He limped back into the jungle, leaving the sounds of plasma fire, alien roars, and the shrieks of dying megafauna behind him. The Yautja pack leader finally stood victorious, breathing heavily, his armor dripping with both green blood and black ichor. He stood over the body of his fallen brother. He looked at the impaled, broken warrior, and then at the swamp where the Ooman had vanished. A chilling realization cut through his rage. They had been trapped. They had lost a hunter. The Ooman, the soft-skinned prey, had not only survived the planet's onslaught, he had used it. He had known it was coming. He was a part of this hell. He belonged here. They did not. The hunt leader stood over the 2 bodies his warriors had recovered. The first Kathek was desecrated, impaled, and mocked. The second, the one lost to the stampede, was broken, impaled by the planet itself. His remaining elites were silent. Their honor stained their hunt a failure. They had lost 3 honored 3 masters to a single mud-covered Ooman, and the planet he called home. The hunt leader's mandibles quivered, a low, constant vibration of suppressed rage. The ghost, this Cross, had not just beaten them. He had humiliated them. He had used their own rules against them and then defiled their dead. The hunt leader felt an emotion he hadn't felt in millennia: shame. This shame curdled, turning into a hot, black, venomous fury. The Ooman fought without honor. They used mud. They used traps. They used the planet. They were vermin. And vermin were not hunted. They were exterminated. The rules of the hunt, the ancient code that forbade the killing of the weak and the unarmed. That code was made for honorable prey. There was no honor on this cursed green hell. There was only victory. He activated his mask's long-range scanner, sweeping the quadrant. He ignored the strong, moving signals of patrols. He was looking for something else. He found it a cluster of Ooman life signs. Dozens of them. All stationary. Their biosigns were weak, their heart rates slow or erratic. They were clustered in a single, thermally stable structure. It was not a fortress. It was a nest. A weak point. He pointed his clawed gauntlet, stabbing the air. There! We will burn their nest. We will kill their young. We will break their spirit. No more games, no honor, only slaughter. The field hospital Hope's Respite was a prefab bunker, and 3 canvas tents set up 5 clicks behind the Last Hope perimeter. It was where the wounded from the initial jungle skirmishes were taken, men too broken to fight, but too stubborn to die. A single medic, Sawbones Rel, was changing a plasma drip for a trooper who had lost both legs to a razor fern. "Just relax," Pike Rel murmured. "New shipment of bloodvine extract comes in tomorrow. We'll have you. I hear 'em," Pike whispered, his eyes wide with fever. "I hear those clicking things. It's just the jungle kid, just the..." The world vaporized. A single focused plasma bolt struck the bunker's generator, plunging the compound into emergency red light. A second bolt hit the Vox antenna, cutting them off. Rel looked up, his blood-stained hands frozen. The hunt leader uncloaked not at the perimeter but in the center of the compound. He was flanked by his 5 remaining elites. They stood for a second, massive demonic silhouettes against the fires. Pike the legless soldier saw them. He didn't scream. He reached for his sidearm. "Demons! Demons!" The hunt leader gave a single guttural command. "Rickaday! Massacre!" It was not a hunt. It was an execution. The elites moved with a terrible, systematic speed. One ripped open the first tent, his wrist blades flashing, silencing the 6 wounded men inside. Another fired his plasma caster point blank into the second tent, incinerating it. "No!" Rel screamed, drawing his las pistol. He fired his shot, sizzling harmlessly off the hunt leader's armor. The hunt leader stalked toward him, not even bothering to raise his weapon. He was walking slowly, deliberately. Rel emptied his pistol, the shots having no effect. He threw the useless weapon and raised his fists, a lone, unarmed man standing against a god of war. You monsters!" The hunt leader backhanded him a casual, contemptuous blow that sent the medic flying through the canvas wall. He crashed broken against a stack of supply crates. The legless soldier, Pike, was still trying to aim his las pistol. The hunt leader stepped on his arm, the crunch of bone audible. He leaned down his mask, inches from the soldier's face. He let the soldier see the cold, dead eyes behind the visor. Then the wrist blades descended. A younger Yautja Gthwe paused. He was standing over a young woman, a nurse, who was shielding a wounded soldier with her own body. Gthwe hesitated. This was not honorable. This was not the way. The hunt leader saw the hesitation. He shoved Gthwe aside and personally impaled them both, pinning them to the floor with his combi stick. He roared at his subordinate. He had been infected, as the outline stated, by the planet's own cruelty. He had become just another one of its monsters. The signal from the hospital was a single choked scream on a dead channel. Stryker and Cross, who had just returned to the bunker, led the quick reaction force themselves. They arrived to a scene of utter carnage. The fires were dying, leaving only smoking, wet ruin. The smell of ozone and cooked meat was overpowering. Cross swept the perimeter. "They're gone. They didn't even try to hide their tracks. They just walked away." Stryker walked into the remains of the main bunker. He saw Pike. He saw Rel. He saw the nurse pinned to the floor by the massive alien spear. He knelt, his hand shaking. He closed the nurse's eyes. He stood up, his face a mask of stone. He had seen men skinned. He had seen men eaten by devils. He had never seen this. This was not war. This was hatred. Cross entered, his face dark. "They hit the wounded, sir. The unarmed." Stryker held up the bloody, torn medic's sash he had pulled from Rel's body. "They are not hunters," he said, his voice a low, dead whisper. "They are not warriors. They're just abominations." He crushed the fabric in his fist. A new, terrifying coldness settled into his eyes, a coldness that matched Cross's. The rules were gone. The hope for survival was gone. All that was left was vengeance. "This is hell," Stryker said. He looked at Cross, a terrible final understanding passing between them. "And we are its gatekeepers. We're going to drag them all down with us." The air in the Last Hope command bunker was thick with the metallic smell of blood and the cold finality of grief. Stryker stood before the tactical map, but he was no longer looking at his dwindling red light icons. He was looking at the blank spaces, the vast swathes of jungle now controlled by the Xenos. Cross was with him, silently running a whetstone along the edge of his Catachan fang, the shing 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 of the stone on steel, the only sound in the room. They're consolidating. Stryker said, his voice a dead monotone. They're moving in a tightening ring. The hospital, that wasn't just rage, it was a tactical strike. It was to break our morale, to make us predictable, to make us cower. It worked, Cross said, not looking up. I can hear them, the rookies. They're terrified. Good, Stryker replied. The word was so cold it made Varys the Voxop flinch. Let them be terrified. Fear is a weapon. We've just been pointing it the wrong way. Stryker turned from the map, his eyes hollow, but burning with a new, terrible light. They think they've won. They think we're trapped. They expect us to dig in to make a last, glorious, stupid stand. They think this is a fortress. He slammed his fist onto the map. We're going to prove them right. He stabbed a finger at a location 5 clicks west of the base. A narrow, winding canyon known to the troopers as the Green Hell. We're going to abandon Last Hope. A full, panicked, disorganized retreat. We're going to run like beaten dogs, and we're going to funnel every last man and woman we have straight into this gorge. Varys's head snapped up. So that's a death trap. There's no cover. The cliffs are sheer. They'll slaughter us from above. It's the most perfect, obvious, irresistible ambush point on the continent. Stryker finished, his voice a low, vicious snarl. They won't be able to help themselves. They're hunters. They live for the glorious kill. And we're going to hand-deliver them the greatest turkey shoot in the history of the galaxy. They'll follow us in, all of them, eager for the final massacre. Cross finally stopped sharpening his knife. He looked at Stryker, a flicker of dark appreciation in his eyes. You're not just retreating. You're setting a new trap. A trap. Stryker laughed, a dry, harsh sound. No, Sergeant. A trap is something you hope the enemy falls into. This is a grave. We're just inviting them to lie down in it. He turned back to the map. I want every proximity mine, every bouncing Betty, every spool of det cord, and every last barrel of promethium we have wired into those cliff walls. Not just the floor, the walls, from the base to the rim. We're not just going to catch them, we're going to bury them. Cross stood sheathing his fang. It's a good plan, but that big one, the one from the hospital, he's the leader. He's arrogant, but he's not a fool. He might hold his best warriors back. He might just send his pack to finish us off. He would. Stryker agreed. Unless he has a reason to be there himself. A reason he cannot ignore. The colonel and the sergeant locked eyes. The final piece of the plan settled into place. You're the Ghost Ripper, Stryker said. You're the one who shamed him. You're the one who desecrated his dead. He wants your skull more than he wants this base. He needs it. A slow, wolfish grin spread across Cross's face. He understood completely. You're not just retreating. You're staging a pursuit. I'm putting the grand prize on a silver platter, Stryker confirmed. You won't be in the column. You'll be the rear guard. You will be the most visible, most defiant, most obnoxiously alive target on the field. You will make them chase you. You will draw that hunt leader and every last one of his monsters down into the bottom of that ravine. You are the bait. Cross hefted his shotgun, the thud of it settling into his grip. He looked at Stryker, his eyes glinting. Bait, he rumbled. No, Colonel, I'm not the bait. He racked a fresh shell into the chamber. I'm the hook. Cross moved through the pre-dawn darkness, a shadow heavier than the night itself. He was not retreating. He was not bait. He was the hand closing the trap. He carried a heavy demolition pack, its contents liberated from the Last Hope armory. He was moving away from the Green Hell back toward the Yautja's primary landing zone, the one the hunt leader and his elites had used. He had tracked them, followed the faint scorch marks of their dropship's engines, a craft far larger and more advanced than Dacto's original fungal-consumed vanguard. He found it in a remote, rocky caldera, a place the jungle had not yet reclaimed. It was a sleek obsidian blade of a ship, a Hadraka-class insertion shuttle. It was cloaked, but to Cross it was as obvious as a bonfire. The air around it shimmered with heat haze. The ozone scent of its active stealth field was thick, and the ground beneath it was dead. The flora blasted into sterile ash by its landing. He moved low, his mud-caked body invisible to its automated thermal sentries. He was a creature of the planet, and the ship was looking for soldiers. He reached the hull, placing his bare hand against the alien metal. It was warm, humming with latent power. This was their ride home, their escape, their lifeline. Cross smiled, a baring of teeth in the dark. He began to plant the charges. He didn't just place them, he wedged them with a sapper's expert malice into the most critical, vulnerable joints he could find. The engine nozzles, the wing roots, the main boarding hatch. He packed every last ounce of high explosive into the alien machine, a gift of imperial spite. When he was finished, he moved 50 meters away to a single flat-topped basalt rock. He drew his fang. He did not write words. He carved a message, a deep, angry pictogram. He spent 10 minutes, the scrape of his knife on the stone, the only sound. It was a crude, brutal image, a Yautja skull. He knew the shape from their masks being held aloft in a clenched fist. He drove his knife into the rock one last time, snapping the tip of the blade off, leaving it embedded in the carving. A signature. He backed away, melting into the shadows, a safe click distant. He took the detonator in his hand. He looked at the sky where the first sickly green light of Catachan's dawn was breaking. "This is for Rel," he whispered. "This is for Pike." He pressed the trigger. There was no sound at first, just a flash of white, silent light. Then the world tore itself apart. The shockwave hit Cross like a physical fist, throwing him back. A column of fire fueled by imperial explosives and an exploding Yautja power core punched a hole in the sky. The blast was immense. It was a miniature sun, a new, violent star born on the surface of Catachan. The roar of the explosion was a physical, rolling cataclysm that shook the trees, the mountains, the very bones of the planet. The hunt leader was 5 clicks away, preparing his elites for the final assault on the green hell. He saw the flash. He felt the heat even from that distance. The ground jumped beneath his feet. He and his warriors spun their masks, automatically compensating for the blinding light. They saw the mushroom cloud of plasma and fire rising where their ship should have been. A high-pitched wail came from their wrist comms, a single repeating Yautja icon vessel lost. They were stranded. The hunt leader didn't roar. He didn't move. He stood paralyzed for a single long second in pure, unadulterated disbelief. The Ooman hadn't just run. He hadn't just hidden. He had circled them. He had flanked them. He had found their ark. And he had burned it. The hunt leader moved. He didn't run. He leaped, his powerful legs carrying him across the jungle in massive kilometer-eating bounds. His remaining warriors, 4 of them, followed a silent, furious pack. They arrived at the caldera. It was no longer a landing site. It was a lake of molten slag, hissing and steaming in the dawn light. The air was thick with the smell of vaporized alloy. Of their advanced star-faring vessel, nothing remained but a smoking black crater. One of the elites pointed. "Leader, the stone!" The hunt leader stalked over to the basalt rock. It was the only thing untouched. He saw the carving, the crude pictogram of the Ooman's victory. He saw the broken knife tip, a final arrogant signature. He knew instantly and absolutely what this meant. This was not a desperate act of sabotage. This was a declaration. The Ooman cross had just burned the boats, his own boats. He had signaled that this was not a hunt that one could win or lose. This was a war that would only end when one side was extinct. It is a trap, the lead elite, the survivor of the Devil Stampede, hissed. The green hell. This is all to draw us there, to strand us, and then to kill us. The hunt leader placed his massive clawed gauntlet on the carving. He felt the rough edges of the stone. He felt the Ooman's hatred. He knew it was a trap. He had known it all along. But now, it didn't matter. Before it was a matter of honor. Now it was a matter of necessity. They were trapped on this world just as the Oomans were. Their only way home was through the Ooman base to whatever long-range voxcaster they had to signal the mothership for an extraction that might take weeks. Yes, the hunt leader's voice modulator growled a low, terrifying sound of finality. It is a trap. He turned his black, emotionless mask sweeping over his remaining few. His pride was gone. His honor was a wound. All that was left was cold, pure, pragmatic rage. He has chosen the hunting ground. He has chosen the terms. He believes this gives him an advantage. He unsheathed his massive wrist blades. We will go. We will walk into his hell. We will slaughter every last one of them. We will take their voxcaster. And I will tear the skull from that ghost, and I will drink this planet's poison from it. He raised his blades to the sky, a dark silhouette against the pillar of smoke. One final hunt. The jungle erupted in the sound of a full-scale panicked retreat. It was a performance of beautiful, terrified chaos. Move, move, go! Stryker roared, firing his bolt pistol into the canopy behind him. He was at the head of the column, leading his surviving forces, perhaps 80 troopers, in a dead sprint. They flooded into the narrow, high-walled mouth of the Green Hell Canyon, a natural choke point of sheer moss-slicked rock. They were not orderly. They stumbled. They screamed. They tripped over roots and dropped ammo packs. Varus the Vox operator was sprinting alongside Stryker, his transmission open and broadcasting. They're on us. They're right on us. Emperor protect. Shut up and run! Varus Stryker bellowed, shoving him forward. To the secondary line, don't look back. Lasfire, wild and unaimed, stitched the canyon walls. The soldiers were a picture of broken morale. A trooper fell, his leg broken, and was left behind screaming for his squad. It was a perfect, agonizing display of prey fleeing the predator. The hunt leader and his 4 remaining elites watched from the canyon rim 100 meters above. They saw the Oomans pour into the gorge. They saw the chaos, the terror. His audio sensors picked up the spike in their heart rates, the high-pitched fear in their voices. It was pathetic. It was contemptible. They break one of the elites. The pack leader hissed, savoring the sight. Like all the others, the hunt leader's mandibles clicked. This was the final, easy slaughter. His prey was trapped in a stone trough. He raised his gauntlet. He wanted this over. He wanted his vengeance. Descend, his voice modulator commanded. Kill them all. Like 5 obsidian gods of death, the Yautja leaped. They fell 100 meters, their massive forms landing with earth-shaking thuds in the middle of the retreating Catachan column. The panic of the soldiers became instantly horribly real. The slaughter began. The Yautja did not even bother with their cloaks. They were done hiding. This was an execution. The hiss-voom of plasma casters echoed, confined by the rock walls. A blue bolt struck a Catachan trooper, and he simply vaporized, his scream cut short. The man next to him was splattered with the molten remains. Another Yautja spun his wrist blades, extended a silver cyclone that cut 3 soldiers in half. It was a one-sided massacre. The Catachans were ants. The Yautja were boots. Stryker, still at the head of the column, did not look back. He heard the screams. He heard the plasma fire. He knew the cost. Keep moving. He roared, his heart breaking with every shriek. To the barricade. The hunt leader strode through the chaos, a giant among the dying. He backhanded a soldier, his armored fist crushing the man's chest. He felt the hot rush of victory. The shame of his lost ship momentarily burned away by the thrill of the kill. The Oomans were dying. Their resistance was broken. And then through the smoke and the plasma haze, he saw him. 50 meters ahead at the end of the retreating column was the ghost. Cross. He wasn't running with them. He was covering them. He stood alone, a rearguard of one, his shotgun in his hands. He saw the hunt leader. Their eyes met. Cross did not run. He raised his shotgun and fired a single defiant slug. The projectile screeched off the hunt leader's shoulder plate, a gesture of pure suicidal contempt. Cross turned and sprinted, not in panic, but in a tactical withdrawal. The hunt leader roared, a sound of pure volcanic hatred that drowned out the screams of the dying. The other soldiers ceased to exist. The trap was forgotten. The massacre was irrelevant. His true prey, the one who had shamed him, the one who had burned his ship and defiled his dead, was right there. Yiskamine, his voice modulator bellowed. He charged. He didn't walk. He bounded, his massive legs propelling him past the terrified retreating Catachans, ignoring them completely. His 4 elites, seeing their leader's charge, followed instantly. They left the wounded, dying soldiers behind their entire 5-hunter pack, now charging as one deep into the canyon, their eyes locked on a single target. They were all in, all of them, deep inside the walls of the green hell. Stryker, hearing the roar behind his men, allowed himself a single grim smile. He was almost at the end of the canyon, a low, pre-built barricade of rock and junk. "He's in," Stryker whispered. "The bastard is in!" Cross didn't slow. He saw the rock and junk barricade ahead. Stryker's men hunkered down behind it. He saw the Yautja hunt leader behind him, a 600-pound juggernaut of rage closing the distance, ignoring the Catachans he had already passed. Cross was the only target. He cleared the last scorched marker painted on the canyon floor. Now Colonel Cross roared, and he dove headfirst over the barricade, tumbling in a cloud of dust and grit to land at Stryker's feet. Stryker was already standing. He wasn't looking at Cross. He was looking at the 5 Yautja, all of them now deep inside the kill box, a perfect condensed group. He didn't hesitate. He didn't give a speech. He just pressed the large red clacker detonator in his hand. Now he bellowed to his men. For a single held-breath microsecond, the world was silent. Then the walls of the green hell exploded. It was not a single blast. It was a rolling, deafening, apocalyptic detonation. 2,000 high-explosive mines, directional claymores, and improvised demolition charges planted by Catachan hands from the canyon floor to the rim, all detonated at the same instant. The blast was horizontal. It was a meat grinder of fire and shrapnel, a solid wall of force that compressed the air in the canyon into a superheated, razor-sharp piston. The 2 Yautja elites at the rear of the pack, the ones who had survived the stampede, simply ceased to exist. They were vaporized in the initial flash, their armor bodies and pride turned into a fine green and red mist. The other 2 elites, the ones flanking their leader, were lifted from their feet. They were shredded. The shrapnel, traveling at supersonic speeds, tore through their armor as if it were paper. Their bodies, riddled with 1,000 holes, were slammed into the opposite canyon wall with enough force to leave permanent bloody craters in the rock. And then the fire came. From hidden recessed nozzles high on the cliffs, salvaged from the Last Hope perimeter, Stryker's final trap was sprung. Liquid promethium. A river of burning adhesive gel poured down into the canyon, engulfing the shrapnel storm in a sea of incandescent flame. The air itself ignited. The rock walls sizzled the moss, turning to black ash in an instant. The Catachan jungle above the rim caught fire, creating a raging crown of flame over the gorge. It was truly a green hell. From the heart of the inferno, a single impossible figure rose. The hunt leader. He was alive. His armor was a ruin. It was blackened, smoking, and half-melted. The plasma caster on his shoulder was a jagged stump of sparking metal. His mask was cracked, the left eye lens dark and shattered. He was bleeding from a dozen shrapnel wounds, fluorescent green blood sizzling on his hot metal plates. He was a demon, forged in the heart of a sun. He ripped the useless sparking mask from his face, tossing it aside. His unmasked face was a terrifying visage of mandibles and pure, ancient hatred. He saw Cross standing up from behind the barricade. He ignored the lass fire that was now pinging harmlessly off his remaining armor. He ignored Stryker. He saw only the Ooman who had done this. He let out a broken, digitized, agonizing roar, a sound of such profound hatred it silenced the gunfire. He charged. "He's mine!" Cross roared. He grabbed his fang, vaulted back over the barricade, and ran screaming his own battle cry to meet the alien's final desperate charge. No tech, no plasma, no guns, just 2 monsters colliding in a burning grave. The hunt leader was stronger, his remaining arm swinging his wrist blades in a devastating arc. Cross was faster, a blur of mud and muscle. He ducked under the scything blow, the blades scraping a shower of sparks from the rock wall behind him. He lunged, driving his fang at the Yautja's chest. The knife screeched, skidding off the thick alloy breastplate, failing to find purchase. The hunt leader roared and grabbed Cross by the throat, his massive clawed gauntlet lifting the 250-pound Catachan clean off the ground. Cross's feet kicked uselessly. His vision began to dim, the pressure crushing his throat. The alien's horrific, unmasked face was inches from his own, its mandibles clicking in a sound of victory. Choking, dying. Cross did the one thing he could. He kicked. Not at the Yautja's armor. He kicked at the ground. He slammed his boot into a patch of wet, bubbling earth right next to the hunt leader's foot. A patch he had been luring the alien toward. It wasn't just mud. It was a brain leaf pit. A sinkhole of thick, neurotoxic sludge, a native carnivorous plant. The hunt leader. His entire focus on the kill had stepped onto the pit's fragile, covered lid. His immense weight, combined with Cross's frantic kicking, broke the surface. The ground gave way. The Yautja roared in shock as his left leg plunged deep into the grasping, living mud. He stumbled, his balance gone, his grip on Cross's throat instinctively loosening. Cross fell to the ground, gasping as the hunt leader bellowed, trying to pull his trapped leg from the sinkhole. The toxins were already working, a fast-acting paralytic seeping into his system. Cross didn't rest. He didn't breathe. He exploded upwards from the ground. The hunt leader, on one knee, his leg hopelessly trapped, saw the Ooman coming. He swung his wrist blades, a desperate, sluggish backhand. Cross ducked under the swing. He was inside the alien's guard, chest to chest. He drove his fang, not at the armor. He drove it up under the alien's chin into the soft flesh of the throat, bypassing the breastplate entirely. He put every ounce of his strength, all the rage of his lost men, all the hatred of his dying world into that one final upward thrust. There was a hiss, a wet, grotesque sound of a body being breached. The hunt leader froze, his mandibles clicked, his one good eye widened in a look of profound, ultimate surprise. He looked down at the human buried in his chest, then at the knife hilt protruding from his own throat. Across his face, a mask of mud and Yautja blood twisted the blade. The hunt leader made a low, gurgling sound. His massive body went limp, his strength fading as his lifeblood poured out. He slumped forward, his heavy dead weight collapsing on top of the Catachan, pinning him to the ground. A new dawn broke over Catachan, the sickly green light filtering through a thick black shroud of smoke. The green hell was silent. The fires had died, leaving the canyon walls scorched black, the ground a slurry of ash, molten metal, and gore. Stryker stood over the barricade, his bolt pistol hanging limply at his side. He stared at the charnel house he had created. He saw the mangled, half-vaporized bodies of his own soldiers, the ones who had panicked and been caught in the Yautja's initial charge. He saw the atomized remains of the Yautja elites. He looked at the survivors, the 30-odd troopers who had made it behind the wall. They were hollow-eyed, trembling, their faces streaked with soot and tears. Varys Stryker's voice was a dry rasp. Head count. Varys, face pale and smeared with blood, couldn't take his eyes off the carnage. "Sir, we ran. We ran 84 into the gorge. We have 31 left. 60%. Stryker closed his eyes. They had won, but the price was staggering. A standard acceptable loss on Catachan. He felt a cold, hollow void open in his chest. "Emperor's mercy," he whispered, knowing there was none. A shape moved in the center of the smoking pit, a figure rising from the dead. Cross pushed the massive, lifeless bulk of the hunt leader off his chest. He stood up slowly, a creature reborn from the fire. He was caked in a thick, drying paste of fluorescent green, blood-black mud and his own crimson sweat. His fatigues were shredded. His skin was burned. He looked less like a man and more like a primal avatar of the jungle's wrath. He looked and was almost not human. He panted, his breath ragged. He looked down at the dead alien, at the crude knife hilt still buried in its throat. He spat on the corpse. He saw the hunt leader's cracked, discarded mask lying in the ash nearby. He bent, picked it up, and walked. He limped step by agonizing step out of the inferno, his boots crunching on the charred bones of both friend and foe. The surviving Catachans just stared, too numb to cheer. He reached the barricade and tossed the heavy alien mask at Stryker's feet. It landed with a dull metallic thud. "It's done," Cross growled. Far above, in the cold, silent void, the Yautja mothership, the Catachan, floated. On its command bridge, a shipmaster, ancient and scarred, watched the 5 bio-monitor feeds. 4 were flat black static. The 5th, the hunt leaders had just winked out his final agonizing roar echoing in the silent room. A full honored hunting party, the best of the best, gone, wiped out by mud plants and soft-skinned humans. This was not a failure. This was a disgrace, an impurity that must be cleansed. The shipmaster's mandibles clicked a sound of cold administrative fury. He would not allow their technology, their secrets to remain on this cursed world. He accessed a deep-level command. He located the beacon of the first ship, the Vanguard. Dakto's scout ship still sitting in the swamp, consumed by the purple fungus. A forgotten piece of their failure. He entered the command for remote total purification. Cross, leaning on the barricade, his knuckles white, suddenly stiffened. His animal senses screamed. "Colonel, do you hear that?" Stryker listened. A faint, high-pitched whine like a million insects was building in the air. It was coming from miles away. It was a sound that did not belong. What in the throne's name? The high-pitched, insectile whine that Cross had heard was building, climbing the scale from an irritant to a physical, bone-vibrating shriek. It was a sound of immense, impossible power gathering. It was not coming from the gorge. It was coming from the horizon, from the direction of Dakto's long-forgotten landing site. "What is that?" Varus hissed, his hands clamped over his vox set, the sound piercing the electronics. "Get down!" Stryker ordered, his voice a flat, sudden command. "Everyone get down, take cover." Cross didn't need to be told. He pulled Stryker down behind the barricade with him. It's not ours." There was a flash. Not a yellow-orange bloom of promethium or a chemical explosive. It was a white flash. A clean, sterile, blinding light that bleached the world of color, turning the burning jungle into a photographic negative for one silent, terrifying second. Then the sound stopped, and the pressure hit. A shockwave, pure and clean, flattened the canopy for miles. It was not a wave of fire, it was a wave of pure force, a colossal, invisible hand that scoured the jungle floor. The tops of the canyon walls were sheared off. The smoke from the green hell was snuffed out, instantly dispersed. The shockwave passed over the barricade like a physical blow, throwing dust, rock, and ash over the cowering survivors. Then silence. A profound, unnatural, deaf silence. The jungle's constant, maddening symphony of shrieks and hisses was gone. Cross was the first to look. He slowly rose, his shotgun in hand. The world was unrecognizable. The smoke was gone. The sky was a pale, sickly green. And in the distance where the swamp had been, there was now nothing. A perfect new circular valley, kilometers wide. The ground was glassy, black, and sterile. The jungle, the swamp, the very earth itself had been vaporized, wiped clean, purified. Stryker stood beside him, his face ashen. He had seen the effects of orbital bombardments. He had seen Exterminatus-class warheads. This was neither. This was surgical. They were cleaning up, Stryker whispered, the realization dawning on him. They didn't just leave. They erased their footprint. They wiped their mistake from the face of the planet. He looked at the few survivors at the smoking gorge. The Imperium. The Inquisition. They would never believe us. They would just declare us tainted and purge us all for seeing this. He picked up his Vox handset. Varus, the official report. Tectonic instability. A subterranean methane vent explosion caused a sympathetic detonation of our remaining ordnance. Patrol Gamma Delta 9, all lost in the accident. The Xenos were never here. Do you understand? Varus just nodded, his eyes wide with the horror of the lie. This was the grim, dark truth. They had not won. They had not been saved. They had simply been sanitized by an unseen foe and would be forced to lie about it to their own masters. Cross sat apart from the others, back at the ruins of Last Hope. The 31 survivors were quiet, salvaging what water and rations they could from the wreckage, their faces numbed by the sheer scale of the day. Cross was cleaning. He was meticulously scraping the alien blood and his own caked gore from the grooves of the Yautja's cracked mask. He had the heavy 3-bladed wrist gauntlet next to him, its metal cold. Stryker walked over his footsteps, heavy. "You keeping those, Sergeant?" Maybe Cross rumbled. He wasn't looking at the mask as a trophy. He was studying it. He was looking at the strange triangular etching on the forehead. He was feeling the impossible alien alloy. "A trophy, Sergeant, to remember the victory." Cross looked up, his eyes as cold and flat as the Catachan mud. "What victory, Colonel? We lost 60% of our force. The planet just had a hole burned in it. And they got away. The big ship. The one that dropped these bastards off. It's still up there. I can't see it. But I can feel it." He ran his thumb over the razor-sharp edge of the wrist blade. "This isn't a trophy. A trophy is something you take from the dead. This is a message from the living." Stryker's face hardened. "You think they'll be back?" This one Cross tapped the mask. He was arrogant. He broke his own rules. He got mad. That's why we won. What about the ones who don't get mad? What about the ones who just hunt? Cross stood, strapping the impossibly heavy gauntlet to his own forearm. It was a crude fit, but it held. "This isn't a reminder of what we fought. It's a warning of what's coming. This was just the first hunt." Far, far away in the cold, deep blackness of the galactic rim, a different Yautja vessel drifted. This was not a warship. It was a temple. An ancient, colossal ark ship home to the ancients, the true leaders of the Yautja race. Inside, a grand elder, his skin grey and scaled with 10,000 years of life, watched the final corrupted data log from the hunt leader's cracked mask. He watched the inferno. He watched the primitive human trap. He watched his honored pack leader, a champion of 1,000 worlds, be brought low by mud and a piece of sharpened steel. The elites around him were silent, their mandibles clicking in rhythms of shame and anger. "A failure," ancient one of them hissed. "Kadar's pack. Disgraced. That world, it is Kiyitde, tainted, forbidden. We must strike it from the star charts, a world of dishonorable primitive vermin." The Grand Elder did not move. He let the log play again. He watched Hask the Rookie charge Dakto. He watched Cross desecrate Karthek's body. He watched the hunt leader Kardar massacre the unarmed in the hospital. No, the ancient's voice was like stone grinding on stone. Kadar failed. He failed us. He was infected by the Ooman's rage. He descended into their crude war. He forgot honor. He forgot the way. He was the one who was tainted, not the Ooman. The ancient looked at the final frozen image. Cross standing in the fire, covered in the hunt leader's blood. "We have hunted the Kainzi Prime until they are little more than cattle. We have dueled the Ooman's armored giants. The galaxy has grown stale. We have prayed for a new test, a pure test, a place where the hunt is not just Ooman versus Yautja, but hunter versus hunter. A world where the very planet is our true rival." He rose from his throne, a towering ancient figure. He walked to the navigation pit where the green jewel of Catachan now glowed. "This world is not forbidden," the ancient declared, his voice echoing in the hall. "It is not a death world. It is Vaid Shua, the holy world, the final. We did not lose an honored pack. We paid the blood price for admission." He looked at his elites, his true, pure-blooded warriors. Kadar brought them war, and they answered. "We will bring them a hunt. We will return, not with arrogance, not with rage, but with respect. We will send the best. We will send the pure. We will honor them with a hunt that will be sung for 10,000 years." On Catachan Stryker and his few survivors, began the long, grim work of rebuilding. The jungle was already creeping back toward the sterile, nuclear-scarred crater, its vines and roots hungry to reclaim the violation. The planet, wounded but not defeated, endured. Cross stood on the broken perimeter of Last Hope, the alien gauntlet on his arm feeling impossibly heavy. He looked up at the oppressive green-black sky, a sky he could never see past. He didn't need to. He knew with an animal's certainty that they were still out there, watching, waiting. They had been marked, they had been chosen. The war was over. The true hunt had only just begun.